All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Ash Performance Podcast. We break down everything basketball from player development, skill acquisition, team settings, content, business, and much more. Today, I'm super excited to have Danny Cooper on. Danny's a high-level basketball skills trainer who's worked with players across multiple levels, high school, college, and professional, including three-time NBA slam dunk champion Mac McClung, Northwestern Jake West, Iowa's Brendan Howson. That's just to name a few. Danny has built a strong reputation in the player development space. He's grown a large following online by consistently putting out great content and quality results. And beyond just training, he's built a sustainable brand in a super competitive industry. And today we're kind of going to break down how he goes about player development, his content strategies, and also running a business at a high level. So, Danny, appreciate you coming on.
Yes, sir. That was a good intro. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Yes, sir. All right, so let's start here with some skill acquisition stuff. So a lot of trainers are starting to make the shift, and there's a big talk around modern skill acquisition concepts, stuff like variability, constraints, game transfer. Those are a few like the buzzwords flying around. So,
Yep.
in your opinion, where do you see a gap between kind of the language that people are starting to use and what's actually happening in these workouts? Because sometimes people have a gap between the knowledge that they're acquiring and actually applying them into workouts.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. It's no different from when these buzzwords weren't kind of, the topic of the day and people would see a skill online and then go to workouts and just try random skills that they would see online. So it's the same kind of thing where people are hearing CLA or repetition without repetition and all these things and kind of trying to apply it, but not necessarily understanding it. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that you have to dive in and really understand. But I also think that's not a bad thing because you need a certain amount of hours of trial and error and experimentation to actually figure out the flow. Because I mean, you know it, it's kind of like an art, right? There's not one way to go about it. You almost become an architect of the environment and you got to kind of flow as you go. And it all depends on the player that you're actually working with. So I think it's good that coaches and trainers are starting to adopt these methods, and it's just important to combine like the actual research with the hours and hours and hours of actually on court because that's the best way to do it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the situation I'm in where I'm still currently playing and just kind of testing all this stuff on myself is like
Yeah.
the best way to learn it for me because I read something or I see a drill or a concept and I immediately apply it and kind of think about ways to apply it in the court. And that's been kind of the easiest way to translate from what I'm reading, what I'm seeing to actual like practical ways to do it. And that's really helped my understanding and kind of bridge that gap because when you first like dive into all this kind of these new concepts on these modern concepts, it can be overwhelming. Um,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, like you said, the easiest way is just actually putting it into practice and just testing it out. You might not have it perfect at first, but that's what's helped me. And I'm sure like that's how you went about it, just applying it, applying it. It's not gonna be perfect at first, but over time you get the hang of it.
Yeah, and also the biggest thing is there's not one size fits all. That's one of
Exactly.
my gripes with this industry is I feel
Mhm.
like I've tried to same thing with politics, right? Like everyone's red or blue. I try to
Mhm.
stay very neutral
Right.
because everyone wants to pick, one method or one way is the highway. I'm kind of like every single player is different. I have some college and pro guys who like to work out one way. I have other guys who like to work out another way. And for me as a player, I like to work out multiple ways as well. So I used to call myself the trainer player. Actually, it's probably well before you followed me, but
Yeah.
it's when I was training and playing at Moravian. And I would like work myself out, work my teammates out, and then I was also playing high level Division 3. So yeah, all that trial and error, and then just learning what worked for me, and then applying it to all my different teammates and obviously players that I work with now. So
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something where you can't just scratch any one method, even if like it quote unquote isn't supported or like not as optimal as the other methods. I think they all have their place. Like this season, while I'm in season, I've still been doing traditional block work. Sometimes like it's good for confidence. It's good to get a feel. Like there's always times when you have to groove out certain patterns by repeating them,
yep.
and stuff like that. So I think, like you said, it's always important to kind of have a blend of these different concepts and the more concepts you can understand and blend them together, the more of like a holistic development you'll have of yourself and other players.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, just having as many tools in the toolbox as you can, and then you don't have to use all of them. It's the same thing with having skills or,
Yeah,
whatever. So
definitely. So, where do you think concepts kind of get oversimplified or maybe misunderstood in the real world training? So maybe if someone's trying to introduce the constraints-led approach with their athletes that they're training, or even just some different tools like differential learning or something? Where do you think maybe they get a little bit oversimplified, like, oh, it's just random variability or just throwing players into small-sided games, and kind of misunderstood in that sense?
Yeah, that's an intricate question. I think it's just all about having a specific purpose for whatever you're doing. So
Yeah.
if you're doing different differential learning shooting and you're having somebody change arcs and you're doing line drives and normal shots and high shots, it's like, what's the purpose of doing that? Not just doing it because it looks cool. And then CLA, I mean, people have been doing constraints forever. I mean, if you're doing like a lane line 1v1 drill to work on handling pressure and you
Yeah.
say you can only dribble between your legs, like just knowing what the purpose is. Maybe the player dribbles the ball too fast and they don't let the ball breathe or hang. So you're going to put the constraint of you can only go between the legs and you got to hang the ball and try to get to the 3 point line. So I think the biggest thing that coaches go wrong is they don't have enough specificity and they don't have enough direction on why they're actually using these approaches. And they might just throw players into a bunch of different drills. That's the biggest thing I pride myself in with my college and pro guys is I'm super big on film. So
Mhm.
we'll do film breakdowns of all their possessions, and then each workout is tailored to exactly what we need. So it's not random workouts. I mean, with our high school groups where it's bigger groups and not as individualized, we'll do more of random and kind of showing them different things. But I think when you're working with a player on a more individual basis, especially at a high level, it has to be way more detailed and have a purpose for these drills. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And like you said, I mean, obviously all of this stuff is super context dependent. And it'll depend based on the player's films, their strengths and weaknesses, if you're really trying to individualize it like you do. So this might be kind of a tough question, but I just want to know all the tools that you have in your toolbox for training players and kind of all these methods and concepts that you use. Could you maybe just for any trainers or players listening, kind of break down when and where generally you use these tools, whether it's putting them in small-sided games or maybe using differential learning to get them out of some like not stable attractors with their shot,
yeah.
um, or even like block work or traditional technique work, just kind of like a blueprint for anybody listening who wants to learn more about when and where you would use these
Yeah,
tools.
so our academy where we work with hundreds of players in Philadelphia, we're at 2 locations. So that's like K through 12. So pretty much all of those workouts are small groups of 6 to 12 players. And that's going to be primarily small sided games. So 1-on-1,
Yeah.
2-on-2, 3-on-3. Because we feel like although players play a lot of games nowadays, they don't get in a structured environment where they're actually learning how to play the game. So that's where I'll go small sided games and CLA. Then in my individual high level workouts, it really depends on the scenario. So like one of my guys, the Caden Lewis, is a point guard at Villanova, and like in season, we're not going to do as much live stuff because he was shooting like 12% off the dribble threes.
Yeah.
So literally most of the workout is just going to be getting block reps of off the dribble threes and then trying to identify why he's missing them and working on his balance and his landing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think for shooting, I'm really big on if a player has a broke jump shot, like fixing that right away.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a in between with how I teach shooting. I think there's some universal truths that you have to teach, like putting your shooting hand in the middle of the ball,
Yeah.
having a straight ball path for the most part, balanced landing. But then I also use a lot of DL shooting with like just trying to get the player to self-organize and figure it out. Um, and then I'm also big on like technical footwork stuff. So like I know there's in skill acquisition a lot about like explicit and implicit
Mm.
teaching, but like for me personally as a player, when I learned like dribble timing and specific, ways to floats and misdirections, all these different terminologies on how to move my body, it completely transformed my game. So I think I like to explicitly teach those things to players who have naturally poor movements
Yeah.
because I found like when I learned that combined with the live play, it took my game to the next level. So I
Yeah.
know I kind of just rambled all over the place, but really depending on the scenario, depending on the player. And then yeah,
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but what I got from that is that more so the younger players could benefit a lot more from just playing live, and
yeah,
accumulating those live reps and just getting a feel for the game. And then the higher level you get, whether like up to college and pro, even maybe high level high school, it gets much more specified to what their kind of weaknesses are and what they're not doing well. And that's when you can really dial in on that.
Yeah, and we'll still have those workouts live, but it's much more controlled where,
Right.
I have two or three helpers that are playing defense.
Yeah.
Um, and then either I'll kind of control it and put them in scenarios that I know they're going to be in, or we'll just make it more of a small sided game, but with a goal or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. And I think the point that you mentioned about the explicit and implicit um kind of instruction about technical stuff like footwork, I think why it can, and this is like maybe what's being missed in the research or not shown, is that with more experienced players who have a lot of actual game reps under their belt, they understand the context behind what you're telling them. Like, okay, when this guy's here, you're gonna jumps up on his 2 feet, pivot and step through. They understand, they could kind of see what's going on and visualize that
yeah,
situation in their head. Whereas a kid, I feel like this is what frustrates me sometimes seeing drills or trainers is that um it's almost like they're just trying to get so good at the drill by like teaching the technique and being like, okay, now we have this drill down, but then the context is completely not there and the kid doesn't even know why they're doing that and they're just getting good at the drill. So I think,
yeah.
yeah, that's at least how I see it.
No, that's a really good point. I feel like I have so much experience because growing up, I was a cone kid. Like my
Yeah.
trainer had me dribble through cones on air. We basically shot like pull-up jumpers at the elbow, like the whole workout. I don't know why I thought it was good because I didn't know any better, right? But
Yeah.
then once I got to college and out of high school and I started learning some stuff, the explicit teaching that I got from a couple people like just made me see the game in a totally different way. Like I didn't even know I could do those moves or dribble that way. And then once I learned the CLA and the games-based approach, I started to put it all into practice and like it just totally transformed my game. So I think it also depends on ideally somebody's a natural mover and they could do things, but if they're not, I think a lot of people do need to be shown that. And then observational learning is a big thing too. Like I don't necessarily believe in it's not all read and react. Like if you watch Curry and Edwards and Trey Young, like these guys have predetermined go-to moves that they're gonna do based on certain scenarios. Like Tyrese Halliburton's gonna float outside your hips a couple times, and then now once he sees where you are, he's gonna read and react to it. But like working on those actual setups, I think is an important thing. Where you're actually aware of what you're doing instead of just randomly doing stuff. So it's a balance for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And that's pretty much how I trained all the way up until um I think it was like a year and a half ago when I started like discovering all these concepts and I kind of shifted my approach a little bit, but I was all the way like with all my trainers and training myself, just kind of really technical, trying to repeat everything perfectly, get the perfect form. And obviously it built a good foundation for me. And like I think it helps to an extent because especially when you're doing it on your own, even if you are trying to be really technical and get this perfect form, if it's coming from you and stuff that you're observing. Like I was just watching basketball, a lot of basketball, so I have the
Yeah.
context from the clips there, and then that's why I'm trying to perfect a technique within a context. So I think yeah, it's super valuable in that context, and when it's done the right way, definitely is a useful method as well. Um,
Yeah.
so, I mean, we kind of already answered that a little bit, but I wanted to get a little bit more in depth. How does your approach change when you're training a high school player versus a college or a pro? I know you mentioned breaking down the film and stuff like that, but if you could go a little bit more into depth with that.
Yeah, I think high school, it really depends on what stage they're at. If they're younger, ninth or 10th grade will be way more broad.
Yeah.
And just kind of put them through a lot of different situations and a lot of different skills. I think as they get older, sophomore, junior, senior year, and we know specifically what they need to work on, I really just try to focus on like one or two things at once and then just go from there. And it's the same thing with the college and pro guys. I mentioned to Caden, like
Mm.
literally the only focus we had was off the dribble threes and
Yeah.
catch and shoot threes. And we're like, if we can master this, you already got the Phoenix shooting like 65% at the rim. He has like 5 assists a game and he has a real shot at being a first round pick this year and next year. But it's like if you can master the three ball, you're gonna you're gonna be way higher. So I think as you go higher up, the focus becomes definitely more focused.
Yeah. Like what's going to get you the highest return on investment? Like
Yeah.
when you're at that level, you're just trying to tweak a few things to, that could open up the rest of your game a little bit more if they're respecting his off the dribble three a little bit more. And now the big stepping up in the pick and roll and he can get by and get to the rim, which is he's doing it at a high level. So yeah, I think that's super on point.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it's a super sorry to interrupt, but it's super
like,
underrated skill is if you're as a college point guard, if you can make off the dribble threes, I
Yeah.
think it's very undertrained from
Mhm.
my experience in college. Like my coaches never really talked about that. And just I think it completely separates you because a lot of teams hard hedge, especially in
Yeah.
the Big East. But after the big, if you can like hezzy for a second and the big gets away, if you can come off and knock down a three, super, super effective. So most players don't shoot at a high clip, but the ones that do are definitely separate themselves. So
Yeah, 100%. So kind of tying into that, you've been working on the off the dribble threes. And so for an example like that, how are you kind of measuring whether something's transferring or not? Are you looking at the stats in his like recent games to see if it's translating? Are you looking at how he's progressing throughout a workout or through week to week? Because
yeah.
it can be tough, like it's subjective on the court to see if a player's progressing, and it's obviously not linear, like they're not necessarily going to get better day to day. So kind of what kind of whether it's like data, stats, or just using the eye test, how do you measure whether the work is translated?
Yeah, I'm honestly big on the eye test for that. Obviously, the numbers can help, but it is such a small sample size. Like in the season, he might only get one or two off the dribble threes in a game. So I really just look at is he doing in the game what we worked on in the workout? So like his biggest thing was when he would land, his whole torso would go back like behind his knees.
Yeah.
And like I'm big on just like I'm all for like being adaptable and being able to fade and being able to drift and all that stuff. But like if you have time, I'm a firm believer in landing straight up and down and
Mm.
like feet wide and really being on balance. I mean, there's just tons of data on shots just go in way more when you do that. So like
Yeah.
if we're working on that in a workout where he has time, the bigs in the drop or the bigs in hard hedge and he recovers and you have time, just landing straight up and down on balance, even forward sometimes.
Mm.
So then I'm just looking in the game to see if he does that. And then I pretty much know based on his landing if the shot's going to go in or not. So then I'll send him a voiceover after the game and be like, I told you, I told you needed to land this way and you're not going to make it. But that's really how we go about it. And he sees the like the players will start to see that like one they have to build the trust sometimes of like, okay, I see it's gonna go in if I listen to you and do it that way.
Yeah.
And then I think it's just a reps thing too. I don't understand. I know there's a lot of like research on it, and everything, but I'm still just a believer in old school reps and getting a certain amount of makes and just
Yeah.
I think it just builds confidence. I mean, for me as a shooter, I shot 46% from three my senior year of college and like getting a certain amount of makes and doing like shooting challenges and
Mm.
just feeling really good helped me a lot. So I'm always gonna stick to that at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think there's like so much value in feeling good, especially when you're in season and you're like
Yeah.
playing a lot. If you're somebody that the team's depending on, if like that was the case, I wouldn't want a player to, be leaving the workout frustrated and like they shot 20, 30% because we were trying to challenge
Yeah.
so much in a workout. Like that's just not really helpful in season if they're trying to perform their best. So I think there's a ton of value in, getting up a lot of reps and just feeling good about your jump shot and feeling like when you step in the gym, you feel like you're going to make every shot.
There's definitely overthinking it too. I used to have a one of my college teammates would make like 1,000 threes a day. And he was like our best shooter, but he would only shoot like 36% from three in the game because he was
Yeah.
just literally shot too much. So I think there's definitely a balance on getting your makes and feeling good, but then getting out of the gym and not overdoing it.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of to add on to that, like obviously you've gotten to a point where you're very confident in your methods and like you know what you're doing with these players. Let's say it's a situation where you've been working on these off the dribble threes and now you see this player still isn't doing it in the game. At that point, do you kind of try and switch up the method of training for that player, or do you feel like it's just more of the time like a psychological aspect, and now you just have to kind of break that psychological barrier for most players?
I think is definitely psychological for certain areas because there's certain things in my opinion that are just tried and true. Like
Mm.
if you come off a high ball screen and you're landing backwards on one foot with your torso back versus landing straight up and down, I think that's just pretty obvious. So like I'm just gonna keep beating at it and just saying you got to do this or else you're just not gonna make it. And then the numbers don't lie. I don't care how you shoot. I'm like if you're shooting 40% from three, I'm gonna shut up and I don't care.
Yeah.
But if you're shooting 12% on off the dribble threes, something's wrong, right? So I think I definitely use the numbers to back up what I believe. And then yeah, that's kind of how I go about it. But
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like as a player, most people would agree you can feel that when you have a good base and you land straight up and down, you hold your follow through, you just feel like it's going in more often than not. And obviously, like you said, you want to be adaptable, be able to make shots in different ways. But I think, like you said, when you can just come back to like home base, like having a solid home base of your shot
Yeah,
as a foundation is just like always important. And the more you can get to that, the better. But if you are put in a situation where you have to stray away, you also want to be comfortable with that and not just be a
for
robot.
sure.
So,
For sure. Yeah.
yeah. So kind of tying into all of that, what do you feel like with players you see is the biggest struggle when they move up a level, whether it's middle school to high school, JV to varsity, going to college, going to pro? What do you feel like is obviously it's different with each level, comes new challenges, but what do you think is the biggest thing you see players struggle with moving up a level? And if you want to specify like one transition specifically like freshman, I mean high school to college, you could do that as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing is making quick decisions, and that has to do with a lot. We don't have a shot clock in most of PA's leagues, so I think a lot of our high school players just are super slow with their decisions. So, like if our freshmen and sophomores get into our more high level groups, they struggle, and then same thing with high school to college. Then on like a more specific level, I think the 3-point line.
Hmm.
So with a lot of my high level like sophomores, juniors, and seniors, we shoot from the college line and back now
Yeah.
because it's like I had a couple players that went to college and they were really struggling and missing short every single time. And I was like, all right, we just gotta. So I think once you get to the point where they're strong enough, you got to scrap the high school line and move
Hmm.
them back.
Yeah.
That's definitely a big one. Confidence can definitely be an issue at times when you go from being like the alpha dog in eighth grade on your middle
Mhm.
school team and then you move up to high school. So just kind of building them up mentally and psychologically to be prepared for adversity when it hits in high school because a lot of players really struggle when they don't play their freshman and sophomore year, even though that's normal
Yeah.
unless you're a freak. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are probably the biggest things I would say.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like, in my experience, like this year is my freshman year at college, and the biggest things that jumped out to me is just physicality and speed of the game. Like in my high school
Yeah.
league, we had a shot clock. I think it was 30 seconds. Yeah, 30-second shot clock. And just coming to college, even though we had a shot clock in high school, the speed is just a different level, and the physicality. Like defenses are just packed in, guys are in the gaps. You're not just walking to the rim. So.
Yeah.
I think at every level, when you jump up a level, that's going to be two of the main ones. And then, like you said, 3-point line coming to college is definitely an adjustment. And I think there's a benefit to, like you said, as soon as they're strong enough, shooting from deeper, because I think for a lot of players, that can also just clean up their mechanics, uh,
Yeah.
their energy transfer and stuff. Just being able to get the ball effortlessly to the rim from far, any shot closer is going to feel pretty effortless, and that's a big component to shooting is just feeling smooth and effortless. So. Yeah, I think that those are some great points.
Yeah, honestly, being strong in gaps is a really big one too,
Yeah.
because I mean, I didn't know what a gap pickup was until probably college, but like gap pickups are probably the number one turnover in high school and college basketball. So definitely as players start to learn the defensive concepts of like being in the gap, stunting and recovering on offense, being able to be strong, get through the gap, get to 2 feet, and then like also just like seeing the game in terms of chess, not checkers.
Mhm.
My college coach, my fifth year, really helped me with that. We had four coaches in 3 years.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of a shit show, but he really helped me just see the game in terms of like drawing help, seeing the 2-on-1 on the weak side, like, and just really trying to play the game and not just making the first pass that you see, but trying to manipulate the defense. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that if you see a really high level high school player like making skip passes or hitting the lift off a side ball screen and just like understanding those reads, you could tell that they're like a real player.
Yeah.
Because most people I feel like don't slow the game down until college.
Mhm.
I know for me, I mean, I wasn't really taught any of that stuff, so it didn't really slow down for me until my fifth year of college, really.
Yeah.
Um, Took me a while, but had I been taught at a younger age, I think it would have happened a lot sooner. So,
Yeah. And with that coach that was teaching you, was that like a lot of sitting down one-on-one and breaking down film, or was it more just him like pointing stuff out to you after practice or?
no, honestly, we practiced pretty much live for like 2 hours. So
Oh,
that also like reinforced like CLA and live play for me because I
okay.
had done a lot of my technical work like the years prior, so I already
Yeah.
had all the skills. So he just put us in all these different situations. And then he would kind of stop the practice. He honestly didn't even talk that much, which I wanted him to talk a little more because
Yeah.
sometimes you like you need a coach to be like, do this explicitly and tell you.
Yeah.
But he would kind of just stop play and point out like you drew help, see the skip, see the 2-on-1 on the weak side, and like you start to put that stuff together and then watch the film. And he would show me the film, and it was a new system.
Hmm.
And he'd be like, Danny, you had the skip wide open on the weak side. I'm like, no, I didn't. They weren't open. He would literally show me the film and they'd be wide open, like sitting there. So it just took me a while to see those reads open up.
Yeah, no,
So
definitely. That's kind of the same thing I've been going through this year is like this is the first time I've ever had every practice filmed and I can go back and watch it.
yeah,
So that's just been huge and like the perception of when you're actually playing and then when you watch it back, stuff looks so
so
much
different.
yeah, like
So
so much
different.
more
Yeah.
open when you're just watching the game from that angle, just like a top bird's eye view angle, and you're like, how did I not see that? But then
Yeah.
over time, like halfway through the year, I started to pick up basketball's all patterns. It's all patterns like
It
these same
really is.
happen all the time. So
Yeah.
and you have much more time in in a possession than you think to actually like consciously think about stuff. So you can be dribbling the ball coming off a pick and roll, and sometimes I'll like have a flashback to something I saw on film in a split second, and then just throw the pass. So I think yeah, like you said, just getting a lot of live reps and also just being having somebody there to point that stuff out to you can help you like slow the game down a lot. Moving on to content, you post a lot of content, and obviously social media kind of rewards quick entertainment and flash. But how do you balance making content that performs well, but also that you feel like really provides value with educating the viewer?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something that me and my content director kind of go over every single day, just thinking about. So when I first started, probably 6 years ago, making content, it was just post any and anything with my phone tripod. Then I bought a camera. Quality was probably super bad. But just trying to, number one, build confidence posting content because a lot of people have to just gain that skill. I think a lot of people are afraid at first to post. And then also, I heard this quote once to teach is to learn twice, where it's like, I just wanted to teach other people because I knew it would help me learn. Nowadays, we really post content with a couple focuses. I would say number one, if a high level player or coach of a college or a pro team sees my content, what are they going to think of me? What's my reputation going to be? So I want them to see my content and view me as a knowledgeable basketball mind in the space. That's probably priority number one.
Yeah.
Number two is providing value to somebody on the other side of the screen. So whether it's a 12-year-old kid on TikTok or YouTube Shorts seeing my content and they can take the skill I'm teaching, if it's like a Jalen Brunson low pickup or something, and then try it in their driveway, like I think there's a lot of value there. And then the third thing is if somebody in the space is going to like maybe buy a mentorship or buy my drills or stuff like that, is my content going to lead to that?
Right.
Right? Because a lot of people can have a lot of followers, have a lot of views, but they're not necessarily respected as an industry thought leader, I guess I would say. So I try to just position myself, I like to say as an enthusiast, not as an expert, because I'm kind of just sharing my point of view on it, but giving a really educated view on my way of player development, and then just trying to build that brand and reputation to help as many people as I can, I think is how we think of it. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of thought that goes into it. And obviously we play into some of the hooks and the captions and thumbnails and all that kind of stuff. Which is obviously important to get more views on it. But
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And you have to like relate to the player that you're trying to sell or trying to give information to. So like I think you mentioned the Jalen Brunson low pickups. Like I think that's a great one because people resonate with like watching their favorite NBA player do a move, and that's an easy way for them to learn. And then on the pro side of things, like you said, just stuff that will resonate with whatever their agent, their coach, or the player themselves, that they look at this and think like this is valuable work. I could learn a lot from this. Um,
yeah.
and like balancing that with what you think is important to share and what you've been learning and what you think is valuable. So I think that's great stuff.
Yeah, I think it also depends on who your target is for a specific post. So if we're posting a carousel targeted at, private sports coaches, we know it's only going to get 40 likes, but it could really help those people who see that post.
Yeah.
And then if we're posting our daily reels on my other account, and we know we have some college and NBA guys that follow me, and they could see their contemporary doing a certain move that they could then pick up and do it. Like some of my guys, like Mac McClung will text me randomly and be like, yo, can you send me clips of Trey Young foul baiting and Trey's floater and Peyton Pritchard's bumps? So
Yeah.
like a lot of our content that we'll try to do is like number one, we try to add film to it, and then also just things that high level players can relate to because they might not have the resources and or the desire, I guess, to seek it out themselves. But if you can be the bridge to help them and like almost spoon feed them that information, I think there's a lot of value there. So,
Yeah, 100%. I think that's great. So moving over to the business side of things, you've built your own business, obviously, and have had a lot of success on that end of things. So what would you say for trainers who are actually trying to turn this into a full-time career? What would you say separates the trainers who burn out
the
and kind of plateau and don't end up being able to turn it into a full-time job and the players that, and the trainers, sorry, that do?
biggest thing is having a mindset shift from being a basketball trainer to a business owner.
Mhm.
So, if you don't know what to do at first, it's very important to throw yourself in the fire, but I think you should go learn from somebody who's already done it. So when I first started, I obviously didn't know how to build a business. So I went and learned from Drew Hanlon, who was at the top of the game, and he taught me everything I needed to know in terms of business. Then I learned from a lot of other people. I studied other different, entrepreneurs and business owners. And then once you kind of get a grasp on how to build the basics of a business, the structure in our industry is number one, finding a set gym. So we've all been probably at random parks and trying to sneak into different community centers and gyms. That's how I first started, but you're not going to build a sustainable business that way. So either buying your own gym, but obviously you need a lot of capital or investors to do that. If not, rent a space. So we rent two spaces in in the Philadelphia area. Rent a space have set days and times, which is the most important because moms love when they know little Johnny's going to basketball at 6 p.m. on Monday nights.
Yeah.
So literally just making it so easy for moms and dads if they're going to take their kid, but
Yeah.
for parents to have a set schedule and then offer monthly memberships for group workouts and only have no more than three offers. So it'd be like 225, 299, 399 for the month. That gets you once a week, twice a week, or unlimited. And then it's literally like, small group workouts at the same place, day and time every week. And that's kind of how I would structure it. And then you just have to be really good at marketing and sales. So I think if you're not building a successful business in a space, you either suck at training, you suck at sales, or you suck at marketing. There's really not much in between. So
Right. And that's something you had to just kind of self-teach. And obviously you say you learned from Drew Hanlon, but I'm
yeah,
sure like you and many other trainers, you probably were going into it not expecting to become like a businessman. You just wanted to train and then you
yeah.
have to learn all this side of like the game and the business game.
It's really challenging too because I think when I was your age, all I
Mhm.
focused on was being the best trainer I could be,
Yeah.
learning everything about skill acquisition and watching film and training as much as I could. But then when I became a business owner, it's almost like a whole separate thing where now I have to learn how to be a business owner. So it's like my days almost split in half from
Yeah.
like really three ways where it's like I got to learn and become a better trainer because I still have so much to learn. I have to operate a business. I have to learn how to run a business. So
Yeah.
it becomes that's why I would say when you're younger, build up as much knowledge as you possibly can when you're
Mhm.
not necessarily a business owner, because
Right.
once you become a business owner, you're just gonna have less time to learn. It's just facts. And even then you still have to make time to learn. So every day I still make sure I watch film and study other trainers and stuff like that. So
Yeah. I mean, like you said to me, like take this time to kind of just enjoy playing college basketball and hoop, but I've also been taking advantage of the fact that I'm in college. I can get food from the sub whenever I need to, and I don't have to worry about all these little things, and I can just kind of learn on how I do need to grow my business and start that a little bit so that
yeah,
by the time I graduate or whenever I finish playing basketball, it's kind of set in place. And that way I have like that kickstart, like you said, because all of a sudden you realize you have to learn about business when you've been just learning how to become a really good trainer this whole time. And I've been trying to
yeah.
kind of blend both, and I've learned a lot of that stuff from you.
But I will say, and there's also like different seasons of life. And
Yeah.
being a really good trainer should always come first. Because if you're not a good trainer, the business is not going to be sustainable anyway.
Yeah.
But I think like putting in those reps of 4 or 5 years of mastering being the best trainer possible. And now when you're ready to really start your business like full scale,
Mhm.
it's not that you don't need to continue learning and evolving, but you've put in so many reps. All right. It's like with shooting, right? If you've
Yeah.
mastered your shot and taken, thousands of makes your whole career. Like my fifth year, I would make sure I made like 100 threes a day.
Yeah.
But maybe my junior year, I was making 500 a day on the gun. But as you get older, you just don't need as much. So that's kind of the approach I took with my journey, where it's like I learned so much up front, and now I have this big knowledge base. I'm still learning a little bit every single day, but now I can focus more on building a business. So,
Right. Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
there's trade-offs each way, but yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So when someone's building a training brand early on, what do you feel like they should focus on first, or maybe more? Um, Taking a few players and really grinding to get them great results, or getting a bigger outreach and kind of just getting more clients, and building their brand that way.
Definitely results. And
Yeah.
I think you use the analogy or example of if you look at an Instagram or TikTok trainer and they have hundreds of thousands or millions of views and followers, but you can't even really name a player that they train.
Yeah.
I think that it says a lot. It doesn't mean they're a bad trainer, but it just says they're probably focused more on content than training. So honestly, we can add a third thing if there's training, being a business owner, and content,
Yeah.
right? So I think a lot of people start as content creators, not as trainers. So
Yeah.
I started as a trainer, then I started making content, then I became a business owner.
Mhm.
And I think that's a pretty good trajectory. You can try to do all three at once, which is kind of what I did also. But I think a lot of, if you're not focused on the results at first and you start as a content guy, then it's going to be really hard to get have a long-term sustainable thing because you're not actually going to get results. So I mean, having a guy like Jake West, who I've worked with since 2020, he's a
Mhm.
starting point guard in the Big Ten as a freshman. That's just a testimonial that I could use forever. And it's not like, I built Jake West, but it just gives me credibility and trust when now if I mean I get a new person reaching out to me every single day telling me that they were referred from someone else. Like a Caden Lewis at Villanova, his dad called me randomly one Sunday night, and I don't even know who told him about me. He's like, someone told me that I should train with you or whatever. So it's like just building that trust and brand, I think, is so much more important than views and likes in
Yeah.
the long term, for
Right.
sure.
Building that foundation and then you reap the benefits on the back end versus trying to get
Yeah,
this huge client base at the beginning and then it's not really sustainable.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So, question I have is if you were starting from scratch in today's environment, starting your training brand and your business, what would you do differently if you would do anything differently?
Yeah, really good question. I think I wouldn't change anything. Let's put it that way. Um, what I would do differently is definitely be smarter with who I got in bed with. So there were a couple business partners, you could say, that things did not go well, and I had to learn really, really hard lessons. Like I said, wouldn't change them, but definitely, especially as a young guy and or girl, if you're watching this, make sure you have a contract in place. That's number one, because people will see you and they'll try to take advantage of you. I'm a glass half full guy, and I like to believe that everybody's good, but in business, you have to almost take the pessimistic view and assume the worst case scenario. So definitely have contracts. Make sure you um just make sure everything's under control, and there's no gray areas. I think that's the biggest thing. So when you leave gray areas, it leaves room for things to go wrong. And then in
All right.
terms of my journey, like we talked about, I don't think I would change my journey at all. Um, I do recommend playing college basketball for anybody who can. I think that was huge for me. Just the one thing, I don't regret it, but I do think being able to relate to a player that, like, I played college basketball, so I can tell my middle school and high school kids that I did that. So like I didn't play overseas, I didn't play in the NBA. So those are the two experiences that I can't really relate to my guys who are doing that.
Yeah.
So I would say if you can play as long as you can, and that experience is, in my opinion, way more valuable than starting your business a couple years prior. But that was just me. So
Yeah. And I think it's important because you have a baseline of, okay, I was this good of a player myself to at least play college basketball. But also, I think it could be super helpful just relating to like the emotional aspect of stuff and like going
yeah.
through adversity and dealing with all that stuff because you can only say you relate so much if you haven't been in the experience, you can't really fully relate to your player. So,
With that said, I wouldn't read too much into that because
Mhm.
I've probably heard 10 times in 3 years, like, where did you play college basketball? So
Right.
It's not too important. I would just say you definitely need a baseline of skill.
Yeah.
And you definitely, because you got to show people that you can hoop. Like you got to
Yeah.
show the kids you're training that you can hoop. And then also, I think just being able to relate and understanding what a college athlete goes through because it's a grind. So understanding like what that takes, because then you can talk to parents and players and help them get through things for sure.
Yeah. You also want to be able to demonstrate the drills. Like
Yeah.
if you're strength and conditioning coaching, you can't even spot your client because you can't lift the weight up. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I never understood an out of shape strength and conditioning coach, but I
yeah,
mean, playing and teaching are two separate arts for sure. I
for
mean,
sure.
some of the best trainers and coaches didn't play at that high of a level, so I mean,
Yeah,
it's definitely two different arts.
that is true. Yeah. Okay, so last question I have for you. If there's one thing serious players or serious trainers listening should kind of rethink or change a little bit about their development process, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say a long-winded answer,
Mhm.
but definitely detaching from outcomes, um, and almost not caring as much. So when I retired from the game of basketball out of high school, I went to Penn State main campus for 2 years, tried to walk on. For those 2 years, I put no pressure on myself to play. I would just play pickup. I would lift. I did PJF performance, vert code. And the biggest thing was that I was just having fun with the game again and just experimenting and not worrying about an immediate result with my work. So then when I transferred to Moravian, it really allowed me to have a different perspective and gratitude that I was just playing a game, and it made me just put less pressure on each moment and each shot, I would say. So
Mhm.
I think just detaching from outcomes, having gratitude and perspective for that it's just a game. You still want to be great and like have that Mamba mentality, but almost realizing that it is just a game and not caring so much that you drive yourself crazy, I think. And then having a life outside of basketball, sometimes stepping away from the game can help you more than you'd ever think. So
Yeah, there's a lot of people who say that when they stopped playing basketball, they became the best player they've ever best
yeah.
shape and like best skill set they've ever had, and they feel like they're at their peak of their performance, like a year or two after they stopped playing basketball. So that just goes to show kind of detaching and not really making it your whole identity could go a long way.
Yeah.
Follow up to that I wanted to ask was you said that when you went to Penn State, you weren't really playing organized ball. You were kind of just playing pickup, still working on your game, but not really in an organized setting. How do you feel like that transition was for you going over to Moravian, where now you're on a college team with pressure to perform, pressure to play well, and you have coaches, and it's more of you have to understand the tactical side of the game a little bit more. Obviously, it helped you from detaching from the result and detaching from identifying as a basketball player, but how do you feel like that transition was if maybe it was tough for you?
Yeah, the hardest part was the tactical side. I remember getting there my junior year and I forgot how to play defense, like help defense and just all of it. Because I came from a powerhouse high school program as well, and our defensive concepts were way different than my college coaches' concepts. So I was just totally lost on defense for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
Because when you're playing club basketball at a Big Ten school, you don't really care about defense. You're just
Yeah. Nobody cares if you
having fun.
and hope.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just having fun and playing. So I think the tactical side was the biggest, and then definitely the speed of the game and just viewing it more from playing chess, not checkers, and seeing the patterns and making reads. But over time with reps, that's why I think like 4 years of college basketball, by your junior, senior year, the game really should slow down because by my fifth year, it finally started to click, and then I got injured. So that was only 2.5 years in, really. So um, definitely was a big transition.
Yeah. And you only played 2.5 years, but you still got to the point where you felt like it was slowing down. Is there anything you did to kind of accelerate that process of like your understanding of the game?
Well, I was a trainer at the same time. So I started training when I was a sophomore in college when I was at Penn State. I mean, really in high school, but I really started taking it seriously as a sophomore in college. Think just the daily pursuit of mastering the game really started slowing it down because like I would study film for an hour in the morning, then I would go put my teammates through 3-on-3 small sided games, and then I would do a technical skill session by myself, and then I
Mm.
would get shots on the gun. So I think just like the mastery of doing it nonstop and then being a trainer and a player at the same time. Sometimes I would add though, and that maybe you've seen this, it was to my detriment because
Mhm.
I almost felt like I knew more than my coaches, which I don't know if you've experienced that. And
Mhm.
it wasn't an ego thing. Like just sometimes my coach would say an old school thing like don't jump off the wrong foot. And I'm like, coach, it's just the same foot, same hand finish. Like,
Yeah.
and that was hard for me at times to hold my tongue and be like, yes, coach.
Yeah.
Even though I felt like I knew more than them. Like I used to run we did guard big men breakdowns my senior year, and I would run the guard session or section, like not even the coaches.
Yeah.
So I think that was the only challenging part being a trainer as I was playing was that sometimes I overthought the game a little bit because now I was thinking from a trainer's perspective.
Yeah. No, I feel like I can 100% relate to that. And I feel like that's like a struggle that I've run into as well is everyone says as a trainer, you don't necessarily want your players to know everything or know
Yeah, yeah,
like rhyme or reason why they're doing. They don't need to know all this research and all these methods. And it's like as somebody who's a player but also a trainer, and I'm like super interested in learning all this stuff as a trainer, but I
yeah,
also want to perform well as a player. It's like a blessing and a curse kind of because it's like I can't forget all of it now. And
no,
but I try to do my best to just kind of like switch modes when I'm playing and just like play free and not really have any thoughts going through my mind. And then when I'm off the court, I can think more like strategically about it and kind of dive into
yeah,
the research and the concepts and stuff. But it's
yeah.
it's
No, I've never really thought about it that way, honestly. But I mean, some advice I could at least where I remember I used to struggle is like I would study ball screens all the time and like
Mm,
different setups into ball screens. So like I would watch how Chris Paul would do like a hip swivel and like do a nudge before the screen and just all these different ways. And my one of my coaches always would tell me like that I would dribble too much before the screen would come. And
mm,
I'm like, well, I got to set my man up. But then what I learned was like sometimes you just catch the ball and sit in triple threat, and you don't even need to take a dribble before the ball screen,
yeah,
and you just come right off. So like I think little things like that where I almost thought like you had to do a hip swivel before a ball screen to get
yeah,
open, but it's like sometimes just hold the ball. And so I think trying to find that balance as a player while you're
mm,
studying the different movements is it's hard, but sometimes try to turn the trainer brain off when you're playing, I guess would be
exactly.
my advice.
Yeah, yeah. I've been trying to do it. It's a tough balance, but I feel like I've been doing a good job at it this year about just like going out there and playing, and then when I'm off the court, I can do whatever else. But yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's kind of all the questions I had. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on, and doing this second part over because I forgot to record it the first time. So
All good.
appreciate
We got some new good stuff in this second part, I think
exactly.
so. It was
So
good.
this is a super valuable episode for sure. For anybody listening, make sure you tap in with Danny at dcoopbball on all socials. He always posts a lot of great content and information that you guys can learn a lot from, and I always learn a lot from. And as always, stay tuned for the next episode of the Ash Performance Podcast, and we'll see you guys next time. Appreciate it, Danny.
Yeah, man, that was dope. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.